Dear God, we need you in this place. Please take these words and make them something more. If there's anything I have to say that's worth listening to, please open their ears to hear me. Amen. There is a concept out there, a list, that is completely fabricated by our culture. This list, it changes. There's no master list, because it changes from person to person, from place to place. My list is not the same as your list. My parents' list, my grandparents' list. The list changes and evolves over time. The list I'm talking about, the concept created by our culture, is the list of curse words. Now don't worry, I'm not going to say any of those words here, but I don't have to. You all know exactly what I mean when I say curse words. In fact, all I have to say is a letter of the alphabet, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. If I say a word, everyone knows which word I'm talking about. If I say F word or S word, that's all I have to say, and you know exactly. There is a list out there of words we are not supposed to say. Now there are kind of three ways to look at this. Some people say, never ever use those words ever. They might as well be deleted from our vocabulary, cut them out of the dictionary, they do not belong. Never use those words. And then there's some other folks who say never ever use those words, except in like extreme situations. Like maybe if you accidentally stub your toe, or you hit yourself with a hammer, or if you're really, really angry, then maybe it's okay. And then there's still a third group of people who use those words all the time. They use them so often that they forget other people consider them inappropriate. And you find those people talking and they like slip those words accidentally, and they're always apologizing. Curse words can be really tricky. And here's where it gets really confusing. A long time ago, some of these words were not considered as inappropriate as they are now. I have two stories about this. The first story is when I was real little, we used to sing hymn number 224 every now and then. It's a Good Christian Friends Rejoice. Now, I like that song. You know, it's a nice hymn. It's got a nice beat. Good Christian friends rejoice with heart and soul and voice. You remember this song, right? But there it is, right in the middle of verse 1, the dreaded A word. What are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to bleep out our song? Are we supposed to just like, just kind of hum through it? Or do we sing it? Do we sing it boldly and then kind of like say a little prayer for forgiveness afterwards? Curse words are tricky. What are we supposed to do? Now the second story, it actually happened to a friend of mine. When I was in college, one of my dear friends, she was Canadian. She's moved to the States since then, but she's from Canada, and apparently in Canada, the S word is, you know which one I'm talking about, the S word is not considered as inappropriate as it is to us in the States. For example, in their radio broadcasts and in their movies and stuff, they don't have to censor that word as much as we do, especially with the older generations. And so she'd be sitting there at Canadian Thanksgiving, you know, their version. She'd be sitting with the family, and the grandmother would just occasionally drop the S-bomb. And all the children would just kind of go, Grandma, you can't say that word. Curse words are tricky. So what are we supposed to do with this curse word concept? What are we supposed to do about this? Well, first I'd like to point out that nowhere in the Bible is there a list of things you can and cannot say. There's no list of, and here are the words you're not supposed to say. Beep, 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 beep. I mean, can you imagine if that was actually in the Bible as like as a Sunday school memory verse? It's just, that's terrible. There's nothing like that. But in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29, we find these words. It says, don't use foul or abusive language. Let everything you say be good and helpful so that your words can be an encouragement to those who hear them. So we need to avoid foul and abusive language. Now this is actually better than just a list of words that we're not supposed to say. Because foul is subjective. It matters who you're talking to. You have to respect other people's situation and figure out where they're coming from. You know, to a first grader, doo-doo head is a bad word, you know? You don't say that in front of little kids, right? Because that's what they consider foul. And another thing is, it's not about curse words and non-curse words, because there are some non-curse words that can still be very abusive. You know what I'm talking about? We don't have to use bad words to hurt people. But if we're trying to avoid being foul and abusive, that takes it to the next level. We actually have to care about the people we're talking to. Scripture tells us, watch your language. It's not about curse words and non-curse words. It says, let everything you say be good and helpful so that your words will be an encouragement to those who hear them. Your words will be an encouragement to those who hear them. Now today is part 4 of our 5-part sermon series. We're talking about taming the terrible tongue. And it says, in the construction project of our faith, the most important supporting role is worker morale. We work together in growing our faith, and nothing can tear people apart in a project quicker than the tongue. James tells us in chapter 3, verse 2, indeed, we all make many mistakes, for if we could control our tongues, we would be perfect and could also control ourselves in every other way. We can make a large horse go wherever we want by means of that small bit in its mouth, and a small rudder makes a huge ship turn wherever the pilot chooses to go, even if the winds are strong. In the same way, the tongue is a small thing, and it makes grand speeches. But a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire, and the tongue is a flame of fire. It is a whole world of wickedness corrupting our entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it is set on fire by hell itself. Whoa. If you've been paying attention to these last couple of weeks as we've been talking about James, you'll find, I know that's one of the words, isn't it? If you've been paying attention to these last, you'll find that James likes big statements, dramatic examples, harsh phrases. I think that's why people like James so much. He's very in your face about this stuff. But I think he makes a really good point here. Virtue starts with your mouth. Virtue starts with your mouth. Notice that everything in all of the examples are of a small thing, having a huge impact. The rudder on a ship, right, is one of the smallest parts of the ship. It's just this little thing. And yet it can steer the entire boat. The bit that goes in a horse's mouth, it's just a little piece of metal. It's like that big, right? It goes in the horse's mouth, and you can steer the entire massive animal with, that metal piece that's attached to the reins. So too, our tongue steers the rest of our life. Self-control starts with the tongue. Living a good life, a life that God would be proud of, starts with the things we say. Now, the tongue can steer the rest of the body for good or for bad, but in the same way, that spread of influence moves outwards as well. It says a tiny spark can set a whole forest on fire. So too can our words set our community on fire. A careless phrase, a hurtful word, a harsh statement out of context. That's how you tear people apart. Just like virtue in the body starts with the tongue, so too do good relationships with the people around us start with the things we say. A healthy life both inside and out, starts with taming the terrible tongue. We must control our tongue and be careful about the things we say. So the passage continues, and it says in verse 7, people can tame all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and fish, but no one can tame the tongue. It is restless and evil, full of deadly poison. See what I mean by harsh phrases? He loves that stuff. No one can tame the tongue. It's restless and evil, full of deadly poison. No one. Sometimes our words praise our Lord and Father, and then sometimes it curses those who have been made in God's image. And so blessings and curses come pouring out of the same mouth. Surely, my brothers and sisters, this is not right. And I love the simplicity of that statement. He describes the situation, and then he just says, surely, my brothers and sisters, this is not right. Blessings and curses coming out of the same mouth. A few weeks ago, when we started this series, we noticed that James has this call. He says that we need to line up what we say and what we do. But now we find that James has this call for consistency. We shouldn't be going back and forth between good and bad things. You don't say good things one day and then turn around and say bad things the next day. Or, more commonly, this is what I see in the world, you say good things to people you like, and you say bad things to everyone else. I see that a lot. They're like, well, I'm a good person. And I'm like, yeah, but to who? You can't pick and choose who we control our tongue. You can't control your tongue sometimes. We need to always be in control of our tongue. For example, my wife Sarah and I, we have the 2 puppies. And I guess they're just going to be my sermon illustrations for life. So we've got the 2 puppies, Raven and Daisy. and they want to be good. They want to be good. You can see it. They're torn. And one of our big struggles with our puppies is that they love to run off into the neighborhood. And we live just off 41, so it's kind of a big deal. If they run off, it's not that far to get right up onto that expressway. You know, and all it takes is one time for them to run out. So that's scary to us. We can't have them be running off. And so what we do is we hang onto their collar, and we have to take them out to we got a zip line in the back, tied between two trees. They can run all over the place. They love it. But I have to hang onto that collar. I take them off, I clip them on, and then when we're done, I have to take them off, and I can't let go. Because if I let go, they take off. Sometimes they listen. Not very often. They take off, they go visit all the neighbors' houses, they go visit the neighbors' dogs, they run out to the road, and they must find some kind of a swamp out there. Because they come back and they smell terrible. I don't even know where there's a swamp by my house. Whatever they find, it smells horrible, and they must just roll in it, because they come back smelling terrible. Now, when they were real little, right? I'd let them off the line, and they'd run right up to the door and wait for me. And I could just walk up and I'd let them in, and we'd all go inside together. It was awesome. But then they figured out, they don't have to go straight to the door. They can go somewhere else. And now they still listen most of the time, but not all the time. And so now we're back to square one. I can't trust them anymore. Because if I let go, they are gone. You know that if they catch a scent, that beagle hunting instinct kicks in, and no amount of treats or yelling or calling or begging and pleading or chasing, you can't catch them. In our life, we can't live a life sometimes controlling our tongue. It's not enough to be mostly good like my puppies. It's not enough for them to listen most of the time. I can't trust them anymore. You can't have fresh water and salt water coming from the same spring. Blessings and cursings from the same mouth. James says, my brothers and sisters, this is not right. But here's the struggle. We just read it in verse 7 and 8. It says, people can tame all kinds of animals, birds, fish, reptiles, but no one can tame the deadly tongue. It is restless and evil, full of deadly poison. No one can tame the deadly tongue. We can do all sorts of good stuff with taming and training of animals. Did you know that you can train your cats and your dogs to go to the bathroom in the house? Well, I mean, they do that anyways, but you can get them to go into the toilet. You can train your cat to go to the bathroom, into a toilet, and then flush. That's amazing, right? And yet, we can do all this stuff with taming and training of animals, and yet we cannot tame our own tongue. But don't get me wrong, we're good most of the time, but then we all have that one bad day where we snap and say something that we regret, right? And it's true. We cannot tame our tongue. We can't keep complete control on our own. We need God's help to do this. We cannot do this without God. And so it goes on in verse 13. It says, if you are wise and understand God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life, by doing good works with the humility that comes from wisdom. If you are bitterly jealous and there's selfish ambition in your heart, don't cover up the truth with boasting and lying. For jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, that's where you will find disorder and evil of every kind. But the wisdom from above is, first of all, it's pure. It's also peace-loving, gentle at all times, willing to yield to others. It's full of mercy and good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. And those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness. True wisdom comes from God. Jealousy and selfish ambition, that's not God's kind of wisdom. That's not from God. The connection between the mouth and the heart is so intimate they feed off of one another. The tongue can steer your heart like the rudder on a ship. If you say good things, you can turn your heart. That influences you. But in the same way, if your heart is in the wrong place, that can lead to a broken rudder, a cursing tongue. If your heart is in the wrong place. But in the same way, if you're saying the wrong things, if the people around you are saying phrases and you say these phrases, that can bleed right down into your heart. It says, if there is, James tells us, if there is jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, that's where, what does it say? You will find every disorder and every kind of evil. Selfish ambition and jealousy in the heart. And that will come bubbling up from your heart and spewing out your mouth. And I know that's gross, but that's what it is. Or it can go the other way and bleed down into your heart. But with God, we can learn to control both, to use our heart and our tongue in the way it was intended, the way it was designed. Verse 17 gives us the outline. It tells us what it's supposed to look like. Verse 17 tells us, "But wisdom from above is pure, peace-loving, gentle at all times, willing to yield to others. It's full of mercy and it's full of good deeds. It shows no favoritism and it's always sincere." So here's my question for you. Is your tongue, is your heart lined up with God's description of wisdom from above? Are your words gentle? Are your words willing to yield to others? Are they pure? Are you full of mercy and good deeds? Do you show favoritism? Are you nice to only some people? Do you talk nice to some people? And do you speak differently to different people? Are you always sincere? Do your words love peace? Or are you creating problems? Now I ask you all these rhetorical questions, but we all know the answer. The answer is no. None of us achieve all of this by ourselves. You know, it changes from person to person what we need to work on. But all of us have something to work on that list. Some of you might be very sincere. Maybe you are great at telling the truth. You always speak the truth. You wear it on your sleeve like a badge of honor. But you're not gentle. You hurt people with your truth. Or maybe you're always gentle. You're always willing to yield to others, so much so that you forget to be sincere. You become wishy-washy, just sort of people-pleasing, saying whatever it is that will make people happy. That's no good either. And so our response is fairly simple. We need to work with God to manage our language. Now at this point, some people say, look, freedom of speech, right? Why can't I just say what I want to say, when I want to say it, to whoever I want to say it? But this is too important to just leave to chance. This is too big a deal to just say whatever you want, whenever you want. We all know that phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, right? We all know that phrase, but we also all know that that's nonsense, right? That's ridiculous. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but psychological scars will last for a lifetime. That's the real phrase. A tiny spark can burn down an entire forest. So too can a misplaced word ruin a friendship. It can ruin an entire community if we do not maintain and manage our language. Now, maintaining our language has three parts. The first part is personal, controlling what we say, recognizing, figuring out what is our vocabulary and why. To decide, are there words that we use that maybe we shouldn't? Who is listening to your words? And it's not just about vocab. It's not just about which words you use. It's also about the atmosphere you're creating when you speak. Is the first thing that comes out of your mouth every single time a complaint? Do you spread gossip? Some people, just with their words, have the ability to make everyone around them feel horrible about themselves. They don't use any bad words. You know, they're not using curse words, but they ruin the atmosphere of a room. And yet other people, just with their words, they walk in and they can make everyone feel amazing about themselves. Just with their words. Words have power. Do your words lift people up or not? The first level is personal, but the second level is intertwined with it, the community, the cultural level. They are so closely intertwined. Where we are and who we are with matters. We need to be understanding of different people and their vocabulary, right? If you use a phrase or a word, something that you know someone else doesn't, seems pretty common, don't use that phrase when you are with those people. And better yet, ask yourself, why don't they use those words? Do they have a good reason for avoiding these phrases? Maybe you can learn something. Why are they avoiding this phrase? Maybe I should be avoiding this phrase. Language is fluid. It's always changing. It's constantly evolving. I can't stand here and say this, don't say this. Right? I can't, because it's always changing. But we need to be careful. We need to be aware that our words can either help people or hurt people, and then we need to choose words that help people. And I can kind of feel some of you tuning out at this point. Some of you are just kind of like, yeah, I know, duh, this makes so much sense, right? Say good things, don't say bad things. Duh. But the reason we're spelling it out so obviously is because this is something so many people take for granted. So many of us just assume that our way is the way. And when you assume that your way is the only way, that your vocabulary is universal, the things you say apply to everyone, that's going to lead to chaos, a lot of hurt feelings, and a lot of misunderstandings. People are different. We communicate in different ways. And the third piece, the last part of this, is maintaining and managing our language is how you say what you say. It's not just about what you say, but it's how you say it that matters. As far as I've found in my studies of the scriptures, I have never found a list of you can't say this and you can't say this. There's a few things. It says don't give false testimony. It says don't take the Lord's name in vain. There are a few things that say don't say this, but there's no list of words. Instead, I find passages like Ephesians that say don't use foul or abusive language. And then in James it says use pure, peace-loving words. Do you notice that these are all feelings? It's not about the list of words. It's not about vocabulary. It's about the atmosphere you create, the feelings that you are putting out there. As Christians, we don't just tell the truth. We tell the truth with love. Let me say that again. As Christians, we don't just tell the truth. We tell the truth with love. Now, for example, this is one of the biggest communication fire starters that I've ever seen. I mean, it's a little tricky, so stick with me. You get two people talking, right? Person one says something. Person two gets offended. Person one says, no, that's not what I meant. Person two, still offended. Person one, offended and angry that person two misinterpreted person one. Kind of hurts my head. Do you see where I'm coming from? Have you ever had somebody get mad at you? Not because of what you said, but because of what they think you meant? Oh, it hurts my head just thinking about it. As Christians, we don't just tell the truth. It's not enough to just spit the truth out there and let it be there. We tell the truth with love. There are three parts to communication: what we say, who we're saying it to, and how we are saying it. We have to be careful how they hear it. The message that we send is not always the message they are receiving. And a little bit, that's our job. Right? Some people say, well, it's not my problem what they hear. It is a little bit. Right? We need to care about other people and how they are hearing what we are saying. In the construction project of life, we have talked about the tools. We talked about the project, we talked about the construction delays, and now we're talking about worker morale. In a construction project, when the workers are happy, that's us. When we are working together and things are going well, projects get finished faster, people feel that they are done better, and everybody feels better at the end of a project. On the other hand, if worker morale, if the workers are miserable, if we have torn each other apart with our words, everything falls apart. It just doesn't work. And the key to that atmosphere, that worker morale, starts with taming the terrible tongue. It's not about a list of words, it's about being careful. It's about caring about people and inviting God to guide us in everything we say and do. James 3 tells us, James chapter 3, verse 2, it says, indeed, we all make many mistakes. For if we could control our tongues, we would be perfect, and we could control ourselves in every other way. It all starts with the things we say. So I leave you with this. May you tame your terrible tongue. May you watch your mouth so that everything coming out of it may lift up and encourage the people around you. Amen.